let's just turn that up. It's been a minute since I played any Fusion, and it shows. Hey folks, how you doing? Welcome on board. It's the Monday Guitar Show. We're doing the thing that we do on Mondays, which is hang out and talk about the guitar. And today we are continuing our ongoing discussion on chords, chord changes, and by extension, playing over chord changes. And we're answering an important question, and one that we have touched on in previous streams, but we haven't really spent an adequate amount of time going over, which is what to do when the chords don't fit. When the chords don't quite fit with your chosen scale, when the chords don't fit neatly to a single scale form or a single scale choice or a single key or any of that sort of business. This happens more often than you might think. Now, of course, I'm playing a willfully non-scaly or non-single key backing track in the intro to kind of prove a point here, but also, you know, we'll get into some more, let's say some more normal or some more common chord progressions as we go. We're going to be talking about all that sort of stuff and more. If you're new here, welcome on board. We do this every Monday. We hang out, we talk about the guitar. It's a good time. Our goal is to make you, dear viewer, a slightly better guitar player when you leave us than you were when you arrived. And we've got a lot of our returning friends in the comments today, let's say. So we're going to say some hellos and then we'll get stuck into the meat of the stream. But before we do this, just want to remind you of a few little bits of housekeeping. First of all, this stream is brought to you by Lick Library and Guitar Interactive Magazine. Go to licklibrary.com for all of your lesson needs. I've got a new course out there, which is an extension of my Mastering Modes course. If you haven't checked that out, that is available on licklibrary.com. The extension of this is a course that we actually filmed in parallel with Mastering Modes, which is an extra resources kind of course where we talk you through not just the theory behind the concepts. I'll say that again. Put my teeth back in. Not just the theory covered in Mastering Modes, but we also talk about the shapes, the practical application, getting the rubber on the road, so to speak. And we talk about that in some detail, but through the same lens that we talked about in Mastering Modes Part 1. Definitely worth your time. If you go to guitarinteractivemagazine.com, by contrast, you'll get news, you'll get reviews, you'll get interviews, you get all that good sort of stuff that is, let's say, non-lesson related. And of course, the other bit of housekeeping here is don't forget to hit the subscribe button on whatever channel you happen to be watching on, and let us know in the comments because we'd love to know what guitar are you playing today. Today, I'm playing this guy once again. This is my Maybach Convair 59 aged. It is still, it's tied for my favorite guitar with the Red PRS. The Red PRS is a guitar with a special place in my heart. This guitar is just a beaut. I love the way it looks, love the way it sounds. It's got a fresh set of strings on it, so I thought we'd play it today. And I've also gone, bizarrely for me, which is unusual in winter, I've gone up a half gauge once again. So I fluctuate between essentially a set of 9s and essentially a set of 9.5s, in essence, both of which have a heavier low string and a heavier B string. The strings in question here are, I'll just talk you through this because we're nerds here, are as follows. It's a Gibson scale length, so it's 24 3/4, and we have the following strings. We have 9.5, 13, which is off a 10 set, 17 off a 10 set, 25, which is lighter than a 10 set, 34, which is significantly lighter, and then what have we got in the bottom? Oh, in the bottom it's a 46. So it's 9.5 to 46 with a fairly well balanced set in between. I fluctuate between that and about a half gauge down from there, but this guitar was feeling a little too light, so I thought we'd throw something on there that's a bit more appropriate. But we want to know what guitar you're playing, and if you've got a custom gauge set of strings on, let us know, or an interesting gauge set of strings, or you just want to let us know what strings you're playing, let us know. Marcin was the first one here who has met my pal Rob Chapman yesterday. Super nice dude. He is a super nice dude, right? He's a very misunderstood guy, I think, is Rob. I think Rob's a great lad. He's also one of those guys who is so similar off camera to how he is on camera because he's a big personality. And you kind of start asking yourself the question with some of these cats, you ask yourself the question, are you really like that, or is it just some big act? Rob's just being Rob. That's just how he is. He's a lovely dude. I get on really well. Great player. He knows a lot of stuff, about a lot of things. Yeah, I'm glad he had a good time. Rob's a really good lad, but he's also saying we need to meet next year. I agree, my man. I think we need to meet next year. Maybe Guitar Summit is the time and place. If you can get yourself to Summit, I'd love to hang out. That'd be great. PJ is in the house saying hello, back in time for the stream. Yes, back in time for the stream this time. We didn't miss any travel this time around. For you guys who are wondering, last time I travelled, I went to Guitar Summit. It was a nightmare getting back. This time was less so. We've been playing in Marseille with Blitzkrieg at South Troopers Festival, which marks the end of our touring for the calendar year. We're back at it next year, but it's nice to kind of draw a line under the air, let's say. We had a great time. It was a really good experience. For all, Marseille has a reputation of being a little bit of let's say, a dangerous city, maybe. We had a good time there. We went into the city, we saw the marina, saw this huge boat. Fantastic. It was really cool. We didn't get a chance to see too much of the city, but I enjoyed what I saw there. It was cool. Larry Warren's in the house. Great to see you. Response Audio's here. Sacred Godslayer's in the house. Helmet Strap talking about the recent drop in temperature. For sure, right? If you guys don't know about this, your guitars require, as Marcin has rightly pointed out, a truss rod adjustment usually once every 6 months when the temperature changes. So you'll need to accommodate the fact that the wood will shrink and grow, and normally that comes in the form of a truss rod adjustment because the metal at the bridge doesn't really change and the material of the nut doesn't really change, but the difference in the size of the wood, it actually physically changes in size, admittedly in a way that you can't really perceive, causes the truss rod to require an adjustment because we get more or less relief in the neck, which can either manifest as an unusually high action or as choking across the guitar's neck. Either way, definitely worth making that adjustment. It's a very small one and your guitars will thank you. I'm sure you know that already. Kate Strange is in the house playing a Steve Vai Pier guitar. You will have seen me playing Kim's Pier in the studio. They're great guitars. They are very, very cool. Marcin agrees. Who else do we have? Neck and Neck 12 is in the house. Oh, speakers namely Shalapia. Kim the Big Boss is in, who's kind enough to lend me his PA and his PRS for the streams when we do it in our London studio. It's good to see. We haven't spoken in a while. It feels like ages since I've spoke to Kim. Maybe I'll have to give him a ring this week and catch up. Timothy Appling is in the house from the Space Coast of Florida. Very cool. Very like a bit of that. Mark McNish is in the house. Our friend Mo Hofschneider. Great names tuning in. Kamadoo 1962 is tuning in, playing an Epiphone LP 60s Tribute Plus. Faded Cherry Burst, nice choice. Roy Callon is in the house. Yamons 96 says sick. Thanks, man, appreciate that. Very good of you. Four Cornish is here. Simon 3 Hodges is tuning in with an Olympic white Strat. Good choice. Strats are white. That's how it works. Gerald Carson's here. Thunderwings is playing his HSS Strat. Jada Barter is in the house. Haven't seen you in a while, man. It's good to have you. Thanks for coming back. Mal Riley's playing a Schecter Black Hellraiser with Sustainiac and Floyd Rose Trem. My friend Alan has a few of them. They're very cool. I don't know if they're the Hellraisers, but they're the Schecters with all this stuff on them. And they're really cool. Very cool guitars. Justin Ray's tuning in. Robert Klinger's here from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Good to have you, Robert. We got an SG Special. We got an SG Supreme in Ebony. We've got lots of nice guitars here. Again, the Ibanez 540 P3. Except it's got bad higher fret access. Well, it's what you pay for a cool looking guitar. We like that. Here's an interesting one. We're playing a friend, I'm going to butcher this name, I apologize, Diavi. I apologize if it's something else. I'm bad at usernames. I try, but I get them wrong. He's playing, and I'll get this wrong as well, an Alchimia by an Argentinian luthier, Nigrelli. I'm going to have to check that out. That's a guitar I have not seen before. Super cool. Very nice. John Page is playing the Touch Me Les Paul. This is a mythic guitar, right? Mythic guitar. It goes back. John Page is my best mate, by the way. It's a mythic guitar. This goes way back, and I'm really pleased that you're tuning in playing that lovely, lovely, lovely guitar. Neck and Neck's playing an Ibanez JS, with lots of numbers. We like JS's. They are super cool. We got a lot of love for Rob in the chat. Rob's a great guy. Nick Harrison is here. Lovely to see you. We got a gem with Polywebs. We got some JHS Boomers. We got lots of cool guitars going in. Last one I'm going to point out here is a Reverend Vernon Reed signature Shaman design. That is superb. Love a bit of that. Love a bit of that. Justin Ray is saying the length of the bow doesn't change, but the radius of the bow will affect the strings. Absolutely. I was probably a little bit vague in the way I described that, but what actually happens is because the wood expands and contracts, it causes the bow to change. That's why we need the truss rod to be adjusted. Absolutely. Charlie's tuning in. If it's the same Charlie Edwards, Charlie, it's great to have you on board. Look out for Charlie's videos. They're coming soon. Anyway, let's get into it. So today we're discussing what happens when the chords just don't fit. What do we mean by this? Well, we've talked in the past about how we can assign keys to chord progressions, and we've talked about all these famous chord progressions that map to a specific key. This is where we start to have things like this, where maybe we have the legendary chord progression of 1, 5, 6, and 4, etc. Or maybe we have a chord progression that is something along the lines of 1 minor, flat 6, flat 7, 5 dominant. These are largely chords that will map to a key, although as we've previously spoken about, this one not so much. But what happens when we get a chord progression like this? Now for this I'm going to show you a very familiar chord progression that we've talked about many times on stream, but it's a perfect example of when the chords don't fit. It's the chord progression to The Boys Are Back in Town by Thin Lizzy. Now, the chords here are as follows. It's in the key of A major. A major gives us the following chords: A, B minor, C sharp minor, D major, E major, F sharp minor. Remember those two: E major, F sharp minor, G sharp half diminished, back to A major. The E could be a dominant 7. All the other major chords could be major 7s. They're chords. So what do we get? We get A major, C sharp minor 7, all is good, D major, F sharp minor. They all fit. 1, 3, 4, 6. Then we have C sharp minor again, F sharp minor. Cool. 3, 6. 2, 5. Then we go here. 1, 3, 4, F major. Wow. Where does that come from? These are our chords. Where's that come from? Would we change it for the world? Absolutely not. It is a super cool chord progression, but it has one of those chords that just doesn't fit. And this is what we're talking about today. When you come across a chord in a progression that doesn't neatly map to your key, what do you do about it? Let me show you a couple of other examples. Another example might be the chord progression for Dock of a Bay by Otis Redding. Great song, great chord progression. It's in the key of G, we think. But here's the thing, all the chords are major. So what do we get? We get G major, B major, C major, walk down to A major. And as if that wasn't enough, the rest of the song is G major, E major, and G major again, then E major. What gives? If we played this diatonically correct to G, it would sound horrendous. We'd get this. G major, B minor, already it sounds bad, C major, A minor, G major, E minor. Well, that's not it, is it? So these are examples of songs that are not jazz songs. They are not fusion instrumentals or any of that stuff. These are pop songs, rock songs, in this case a soul song, that have these chords that don't necessarily fit to our key. We're going to talk about some strategies over this in a second. Let me show you one more example, because everything we've done so far has been either major chords or dominant chords. You get rogue minor chords too. A favourite for this one is the song Light My Fire by The Doors, which I'm going to assume is in the key of E, which has this. Strange old set of chords. E minor, C sharp, C sharp minor. Now, I would probably argue that the C sharp minor is actually in key and the E minor is the rogue chord, because it becomes E major as we go. But even still, what an interesting set of chords. Very strange, very unusual. We also have chord progressions that maybe borrow a chord for just a moment. We can talk about those. We've talked about the chord progression for Is This Love by Whitesnake. It's another really great choice. There are loads of these songs. They're all over the place. We can't expect every song to neatly and comfortably conform to a key. Otherwise, songs would sound boring. Sometimes you find this with some styles of music that have a very limited harmonic palette. It becomes a bit dull after a while. You often find this in, for want of a better word, let's say pop music created by producers rather than songwriters. Let's say you get that sort of thing. Anyway, here's another one. What Is Life has that situation. Yeah, for sure. There's loads of great songs like this. Yesterday goes out of the key sender. Absolutely right. So we've got, it's all over the place, right? This happens fairly regular. We need to know what to do about it. So let's take a few examples here. We're going to begin with perhaps the most common and simplest example, which is what happens when we get a borrowed chord. So a borrowed chord that appears in a chord progression without necessarily being part of the chord progression. For this, I'm going to go to the middle section of our Top Gun ballad. All these backing tracks are available on licklibrary.com. I've resisted the urge to bring in backing tracks from songs. We're going to keep this to the jam style backing tracks that we've got available to us. But again, they're all available on licklibrary.com. Here's the Top Gun ballad. It's in the key of D major, becoming B minor, which is here. So the chords are as follows. In B minor, which I believe it's going to go to now, I hope so. We have B minor, going to G major, with an A for good measure. B minor again. Then we go to the 4 chord, but the 4 chord is major. Interesting beast. Now, we would expect in B minor, or in the key of D major, which is our parent key, for this E chord to be an E minor. In this instance, it is not an E minor, it is an E major chord. Here what we can do is we can take a look at the simplest thing to do when the chords don't fit, is we look at which notes are different about the chord that doesn't fit, and we adjust our scale to match. So in this case, we're expecting it to be E minor. What we get instead is E major. So in this case, we have a G note, we have a G note becoming a G sharp note. So we take our D major / B minor scale, in this case B minor, and what we do here instead is we take all of the G notes, which are here and here, and we bump those up by 1 fret to match the chord. We've looked at our chord and we've seen how little we can do. What do we need to change to keep this chord working for us? And can we change that and basically nothing else? And the answer is yes. So in this case, we've changed this, we haven't changed this, we've changed that, we haven't changed anything else. That's the point. So here what we get is we get a simple change from B minor to B Dorian. Now this hints at a bigger concept that we can look at, which is treating each chord as an island, and we're going to get to that. But for the time being, let me show you how this might pan out with a simple B minor scale becoming a B Dorian scale. This is a very obvious one. You guys probably already know this, but let's run with it anyway. So what we get is this. Here's B minor. It's still functioning as D major at this point, but it becomes B minor here. Let's get the Dorian when it changes here. And there we change back. Now the trick with this is we only need to do this for the duration of the chord. For the duration of the strange chord that has arrived, we change something, and then we can look back at it. Now, another example of this is, or we can go back to our previous one, another example of this is the 87 ballad we've got, which is our Whitesnake style backing track. This one is in the key of E minor, and it features an F major chord. F major chord being here. In this case, the note we need to change, that is different from what we're expecting, is the F. The F sharp needs to become an F. So we're playing an E minor. The only note in this chord that doesn't belong in our E minor scale is F, so we take all our F sharps, we bump them down to Fs. This is the most basic way to deal with this. This momentarily gives us an E Phrygian scale. Now that's perhaps not the most accurate characterization of what's actually happening here, but as a survival strategy, it can work, especially if you know which chord is coming and you've got enough time to figure this stuff out. So let me quickly throw on the 87 ballad, if I can find the thing. Where are you? Got the 87 shuffle. We don't want that one. We've got lots of I've put so many backing tracks here. I really do need to organize this better. It's becoming a bit of a problem. There we go, 87 ballad. So when we hit the F chord, that's when we make our switch. And we switch out the F sharp notes for Fs. I'll get back up here so we can see it. There's F sharp. Here's our chord. So it is enough for us to do that momentarily over the chord. And there we have it. Now, that can work if we have maybe just one note that has changed. Or sometimes two. It starts to get a bit drastic. There's more than that. This works quite well for borrowed chords, but it is a strategy that has its limitations. So perhaps a better approach or a more complete approach is to look at the rogue chord, the chord that doesn't belong, as its own entity and apply an appropriate scale to that chord and that chord alone, which is certainly, let's say, it's a more foolproof approach to playing this stuff. It does require a little bit more, I guess, a bit more familiarization with the guitar's fretboard, but it's not a huge deal. So what we should do in this instance is we take a look at the value of the chord, i.e. is it major? Is it a major 7th chord? Is it a dominant 7th chord? Is it a dominant 7th chord resolving to a 5 chord? Is it a minor 7 flat 5? Is it a minor 7 chord? Are there any extensions, let's say, and we apply an appropriate scale. Let's begin with the big rocks. The big rocks here are as follows. If we have a major 7 chord that appears out of nowhere, a chord that will contain a major 3rd and some kind of major 7th, which might be this. In this instance, with no other information to tell us about extensions, we choose Lydian in this case. Why Lydian? We just do. It's one of those things. We can try the major scale, that would also map. But in this case, we play Lydian. Just take that as gospel. You hear a major 7 chord that has no connection to the other chords, you play Lydian. Right? This works whether you're playing fusion, whether you're playing over The Boys Are Back in Town, whether you're playing over this 87 ballad. So what we could do here is we could take a look at this chord being F and apply F Lydian over the top. Now what you might notice here is the notes of F Lydian, which are F, G, A, B, C, D, and E, are the same notes as E Phrygian. Same notes, which means we're getting to the same result in this case, and that changing our F note to F sharp note to our F has actually just led us to a F Lydian in this context. But that's not always the case when it comes to changing these individual notes. Let me show you how this pans out. We're going to go back to here. When we get to this lovely F chord, I'll momentarily play F Lydian. Here's E minor. get ready for my F Lydian. Here we go. There's a bigger one coming up. And for this, I'll play a long scale shape that we might be familiar with. Here it goes. You can see how that works, right? So if we have a major 7 chord where the change comes out of nowhere, we play Lydian. Let me take you on a little tour of some backing tracks, a backing track we've got here that only plays Lydian chords, right? This is, I wanted to call this something cool, and we ended up just calling it the Joe Satriani backing track, which is fine, but I called it something else, and I won't tell you what I called it, but it's a cool backing track. This is entirely major 7 chords, but it's major 7 chords that don't connect to each other. The chords are as follows. We have A major 7, C major 7, F major 7, D major 7. These chords do not belong, and what we get is this. With every chord being Lydian, C major 7, F major 7, D major 7, This is made up entirely of major 7 chords, but there are other songs that are made up entirely of major 7 chords. A personal favourite of mine is the chord changes to the song American Boy by Estelle featuring Kanye West, which is E major 7, C major 7. I play it as A major 7 going to F major 7. I actually think it's an E minor 7, but I like the A major 7 there. So it's this: E Lydian, C Lydian, A Lydian, F Lydian. None of these chords map to a key, so we can play Lydian over all of them. The next one goes for Boys Are Back in Town. Same thing when we get to this F chord in the key of our A major, in our A major key. We can play Lydian. And away we go. So that's the rule, right? Major chord, you play Lydian. Not so fast. You play the major chord, if you hear a major chord and it's a major 7, if it would have a major 7th in it, you play Lydian. However, if you get a dominant 7 chord that is not resolving to a 5 chord, not resolving from 5 to 1, we covered that last week, 5-1 movements. If it's not resolving, if it's what we call a static dominant, or a non-functional dominant, a dominant chord that does not go to its 1 if it were a 5, then we play something else. But here's the thing, dominant chords and major 7 chords have the same triad. They are both a major triad. They only reveal themselves to be either dominant 7 or major 7 when we hear the 7th. So that can become complicated. But here's what we do with these. There are 2 ways we can approach a static dominant. There are actually lots of ways, because it's one of the most fun and most interesting chords to solo over, because there are loads of options. We could play it as if it were a blues, for example. So whatever we play over a dominant 7 blues, we can play over our static dominant. The one we're going to go back to for this is E dominant 7, which appears in our Top Gun backing track. Now we'll get into how we know it's dominant 7 and not major 7 in a second, because it's actually just an E chord. Now for you guys who are just tuning in, the chords in question are B minor with this B minor 11 over here. Got some cool tips from Nick's Corsair S1 tips here, by the way. Treat the B minor chord as a B minor 7. You can target the A and then move to the G sharp. It's a good shout, my man. Yeah, that works really well. For For a little line cliche, we love a bit of that. But it's this, very 80s sounding. Those chords, it is B minor, it is B Aeolian. But then we also have this E major in here, which takes the G notes and pushes up to a G sharp. It's a major chord, it's actually a dominant chord. It would actually be this. We'll get into how we know in a second, because there are some little tips for figuring out which one it's going to be. But if it's just a major triad, we need to figure out whether it's major 7 or whether it's dominant 7. I'll get into what those are. But we could play it as if it were a blues. So we could play E blues over this, any kind of E blues lick that we typically play. That would work. It helps if you lean into the major pentatonic side of things. That would work just well, just fine. Steve Ford with a really good answer. You could just play an arpeggio of the chord. Sure, you absolutely could. You absolutely could do that. But what we're also going to do, another option for this, is to play the mixed Lydian scale. This is a really good choice. So in this case, E mixed Lydian. Would work really well. There are some other choices. We could play Lydian dominant, we could play half whole diminished. We'll talk about both of those in a second because they're slightly more outside choices, but we can do that. So let's find our Top Gun ballad backing track. I'll show you the chords and how we're going to play over them. This is a random major chord, which is actually a dominant 7 chord, and what to do with that. So over these, we play mixed Lydian. We could play Lydian dominant if we wanted to. We could also play as if it were a blues, and I'll show you both. Okay, so here we go. Here's the Top Gun ballad. Let's just find that little section. So it's going to become, from D major becoming B minor. So I'll play B minor first. And this time what I'll do is I'll play it as if it was a blues in E. That works quite well. But another example of this would be to play E mixed Lydian. Remember, it's A natural minor. Here we go, E mixed Lydian. Now in this instance, for our minor chord progression with 4 dominant or a 4 major chord, the notes of E mixed Lydian are the same notes as B Dorian. So we got the same result both times, but it doesn't always work that way. It doesn't always work that way. Now, in terms of Lydian dominant, you can play Lydian dominant over this and it works really quite well. It can be quite a spicy sound, but it can be quite good fun. Now, in case you're unfamiliar, the Lydian dominant is a Lydian scale that also features a sharp 4, which might look something like this. So we're in the key of E, we could have E, it's 2, it's 3, sharp 4, 5, and then we have, did I say Lydian scale? It's a mixed Lydian scale with a sharp 4, is what it is. Lydian dominant, mixed Lydian scale with a sharp 4. So sharp 4, flat 7. 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, flat 7. A very fusiony sound and very, very cool sounding nonetheless. Now, let's take a look at how that might pan out over said backing track. So same thing, when we get to that E, I'll play E Lydian dominant here. Go. E Lydian dominant. Good fun. It sounds very jazz, but that can sometimes be really cool. Now, a fun place to do this is to do an E Lydian dominant, or sorry, do a Lydian dominant over one of the 7 chords in our blues. That works really well because a blues is made up entirely of chords that don't fit to a single key. That's, or rather a dominant blues is anyway. So if we take something like this, like, let's take a slightly cheesy one. We've got a blues with horns in A major that people have complained about because they think the horns are really cheesy. It's meant to be cheesy horns. It's kind of Vegas horns, although they are a bit programmed. So what I'll do here is I'll play A, it's an A blues. When I get to the D, I'll play a D Lydian dominant. Because the chord progression, the chord is D7. I'll keep it fairly standard over the A, just so we don't upset too many sensibilities. We get this. D Lydian dominant here. E Lydian dominant. D Lydian dominant. A little bit of super lockering at the end. Why not? So you can see that flies, that works really well. Other things we could play over this, one other option, I did see there was lots of options for static dominance, is half whole diminished. Half whole diminished can work really well because it contains within it a dominant chord. In this case, I will play D half whole diminished, which we can map down to here, because the half whole diminished repeats in 3 fret intervals. So you'll see me play this as, it looks like A flat half whole diminished, but it is D half whole diminished, it's the same notes. And we get this. Be prepared for some sour sounds here, by the way. You can see how that pans out. Again, some very tense sounds here. But the fun thing about this is that we can withstand tense sounds. Tense sounds can be okay on a dominant 7 chord. Here's a fun rule about dominant 7 chords. Dominant 7s can withstand tension. You can be tense on dominant 7s because they have tension baked into them. You just need to know how to stick the landing, which is to play something nice over the chord that follows. Carl Verheyen had a really great take on this where he said you can play basically anything you like as long as you apologise for it with some blues. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of it, Carl. What a guy, what a player. Love a bit of Carl Verheyen. Anyway, how do we know? This is the next question. Is we talked about this triad. We talked about the idea of having a major chord, and then like how do we know if it's going to be a major 7 or it's going to be a dominant 7? Because if it's just a major triad, how do we know which one to play? Here's how you know. Here's how you find out. Let me show you this right now. So what we do is we look at the rogue chord that has appeared out of nowhere, like for example in our B minor, this E major, and we examine where the 7th would lie. In this case, if it was a major 7, it'd be a D sharp. If it's a dominant 7, it would be a D natural. And we examine which one of these notes would map most closely to our parent key. We're in the key of D major / B minor. If we only hear this, the ear fills in this note, which is D, because it's been hearing that for the rest of the chord progression. If we hear this, it's unusual that we're going to get that because that represents, yikes, that represents something that is outside of our chord progression. So you'll notice that the D feels quite predictable here. Whereas the D sharp for all it's a prettier sound, feels a bit of a departure. Now that can sound cool, but we would expect it not to be there. Let's take the other example, which is the major triad in The Boys Are Back in Town. Key of A with an F major triad and nowhere. If we look at where the major seventh would be, it would be an E natural. The dominant seven, the flat seven, would be an E flat. E is in our key of A major. E flat is not. So, our ear fills in that this is major 7. So we can deduce that we should play Lydian. Over that. And that's how we know. That's how you know if you only get a triad, which one of these do you do? So once again, if it's a major chord and a major 7th chord, just play Lydian. If it's a dominant 7 chord, you've got loads of options. You can play it as if it was a dominant blues. You can play mixed Lydian, which is a very safe bet. You can play Lydian dominant, which is a slightly more out there kind of bet, but it can work really well. You can play half all diminished, which is more out there again. The other big chord family is minor 7s. If we get a random minor 7 that just occurs out of nowhere, we have one simple option, and it's Dorian. We play Dorian. If you hear a minor 7, you play Dorian. Why not Aeolian? Don't know, but you play Dorian. That's how it works. The track I was playing in the intro was entirely minor 7 chords that just exist one after the other. And the minor 7 chords in question are these. We have E minor 7, C minor 7, D minor 7, F sharp minor 7. Parallel minor 7s. Mal Riley's saying, what are the notes for the Lydian dominant 7? So in this case, Lydian dominant are the following notes. If you want to play them in E, the notes are E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D natural. But the formula is more useful. The formula is 1, 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Now, for the longest time, I have petitioned that the Lydian dominant scale has the wrong name. For me, it's the mixed Lydian sharp 4 scale, because it's most closely related to mixed Lydian. I think it sounds more like mixed Lydian than it sounds like Lydian. There's Lydian. There's Lydian dominant. We call it Lydian dominant because of George Russell and his Lydian chromatic. Have I got my names right there? George Russell. I'm just doubting myself. I had a total mental blank there. The Lydian chromatic concept. I need to Google this. Lydian chromatic. Yeah, it's George Russell. There you go. I don't know why I blanked on that. I was like, that can't be his name. Yeah, George Russell's Lydian chromatic concept, tonal organisation. That's why we call it Lydian dominant. I think a better name is mixed Lydian sharp 4, personally, but I think all the modes of melodic minor have the wrong names, so sue me. I'm wrong on this. I worked them out myself on the notepad. I was never taught them, so I learned weird names for them. But don't use my weird names. Use the names that everybody else uses, because ultimately the name's not that important, and what's more important is that you understand it and you can communicate it with other musicians. But those are the notes. Anyway, all of our Dorian chords are minor 7 chords. When we get minor 7, we play Dorian. If there's no other information, we play Dorian. The main reason for this, truthfully, the main reason is because there are fewer semitone clashes around the important notes, like, for example, the 5th. So the 5th has a bit of clearance on it. Yes, there's a semitone clash potentially on the major 7, but major 6 chords sound quite cool, like this. Whereas major 7 flat 13 chords, interesting beasts. There's a minor 13, and then a minor 6 chord would be this. Also a lot of fun. So we just play Dorian. That's kind of the rule for this. So if we find this backing track, which again I wanted to give a name to, and I wanted to call it the classic YouTube fusion, because this one particular chord progression was so prominent in like YouTube guitar within a certain era of time. It's like 2011 YouTube guitar. That's where it is. Here's one from our friend RF2835. First of all, semitone clashes are not necessarily a bad thing. When Lydian over major 7, there is, but that's another interesting one because it also removes the semitone clash from the third. I don't know why it's more important for the third, but it is important for the third. So I guess it's maybe one of these things where what we try and do is we try and clear the tonic, and then we try and clear the third, and then we try and clear the fifth, and then the upper extensions can withstand more tension. Maybe that's it. So the clash on the third, the 4-note clashing against our third, generally sounds a bit disgusting. So we might get this, for example, in the key of E. If I play this over and over again, it's okay, but it sounds kind of foul. Whereas this, a Lydian note, sounds more harmonious. There's definitely an easy way to demonstrate that than the way I'm doing it. I'm tying myself in knots. That is the avoid note. It is commonly called the avoid note in the major scale, yes. I mean, I would probably be more inclined to use it, to call it the treat with caution note, or don't resolve on me note, but you can play it, you don't need to avoid it, but it's just like over the one chord, maybe hanging on that's maybe not the move. So anyway, dominant notes, what am I talking about? Dorian, here we go, Dorian over parallel major 7, minor 7s. Whew, my head's run out of head. Here we go. Right, these are all parallel minor 7 chords. I'll shout them out as we go. So we get this, F, A minor 7, so A Dorian. Next one is C minor 7, C Dorian. Next one is D. So D minor 7, D Dorian. Next one is F. So F Dorian. Then we're back to A, which is A Dorian. Dorian just works. Let me try playing Aeolian over these, and I'll show you why it doesn't work. So, just because, you'll notice it sounds a bit cack. So, here is Aeolian over these minor 7 chords. C Aeolian. It just doesn't have it. D Aeolian. Just, it's not it. It's not it. So you get this rogue chord, you play Dorian. What do we do over our example chord progression from earlier, which was Light My Fire? Well, what we do is we play over E minor, C sharp minor, it's E Dorian, C sharp Dorian. So we get this. Hooray! That's what we do over those. There is one other option that we can employ over our minor 7 chord, which is melodic minor. A melodic minor you can think of as being Dorian, but with the 7 sharpened. So I actually think, when I think of melodic minor, I imagine it as a Dorian scale, and I think of it as Dorian sharp 7. Incidentally, the modes of melodic minor, if you want a more elegant naming convention for it, please don't use these because people won't know what you're talking about. But we get the following. From the root position, it is, for the first position, It's Dorian sharp 7, Phrygian sharp 6, Lydian sharp 3, mixed Lydian sharp 4. Sorry, again, my mistake. I'll say that, sorry, once again. Dorian sharp 7, Phrygian sharp 6, Lydian sharp 5, mixed Lydian sharp 4, Aeolian sharp 3, Locrian sharp 2, and the super Locrian is actually Ionian sharp 1. So it moves in major scale mode order, and then you just move the sharpened note down from 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, as opposed to having Lydian augmented and Lydian dominant in the same thing and no mixed Lydian anything. Oh no, it's mixed Lydian flat 6, which doesn't sound like mixed Lydian, it sounds like Aeolian dominant. I just think the names are wrong. That's all I'm saying. Now, that's just an opinion. Please don't take that as gospel. It's just me. It's just silly thoughts that I have. Shower thoughts. But that's how it goes. So melodic minor, Dorian with a sharp 4, that will work. And it will certainly work over this track because it's fusion. It's a way of getting a bit more tension into a rogue minor 7 chord, should you find one, which would give us this. And we can use them interchangeably. There's Dorian, melodic minor, Dorian, melodic minor, Dorian, melodic minor, woo, spicy, but sometimes spicy is fun, so we can do that too. That sounds really nice. Now, the next thing to look at is options for other interesting chords. If we have a minor 7 flat 5, for example, it's quite a common chord, we generally play Locrian over that, but we could also play what I will refer to as Locrian sharp 2, but sometimes you'll hear it called Aeolian flat 5. Either way is fine, it's a melodic minor mode. The other big one is what happens if you have a 5 chord that is moving to a 1 chord. So E7 moving to A something. In that case, you're free to treat it like we did in our 5-1s in our last stream. So we'll gloss over that. It's another option. Functional dominance, static dominance, different things. If it's moving to its 1 chord, it's a functional dominant. If it's not, it's a static dominant. Which means we have to choose different scales to play over them. Once again, to recap, our options are as follows. If you have a major 7 chord, just play Lydian. Just play Lydian. You'll be okay. Lydian, everything will be fine. If it's a dominant 7 chord, not resolving to its 1, start with mixed Lydian. Consider playing it as a blues. If that's not spicy enough, try Lydian dominant or try half whole diminished. Both spicy choices, but mixed Lydian is a good safe choice. If you have a minor 7 chord, just play Dorian. But if you want a spicy choice, melodic minor works really well. Now, what if the chord's got some things in it that tells us, I need to be something else, Nick? Well, let's look at this chord. So this is one from the Joe Bonamassa chord progression that I keep threatening you guys with, which is this. Chord progression, A minor, G6, we can worry less about those. This just maps to A minor. So it's A minor add 9, G6. This chord, which is F sharp 7 with a natural 11. F sharp dominant 7 with a natural 11. It's not the sharp 11. We cannot play Lydian dominant over this chord because has this B note in. This B note is the natural 4. The sharp 4 and Lydian dominant would clash terribly against this chord. So we must examine our other options. We could play mixed Lydian. And that would work okay. But another option is mixed Lydian flat 6. Why might I choose that? Over choosing mixed Lydian? Well, it has a D note in it as opposed to a D sharp note, and in this case the D note is sort of already in our scale, so I can minimize movement by choosing a mixed Lydian flat 6 or Aeolian dominant over that, which is what I'm going to choose. So check it out. When we get to this chord, I'll do 2 passes. I'll do one playing mixed Lydian and then one playing Aeolian dominant / mixed Lydian flat 6. Same notes. This is our Jobo Railroad Stomp. It's mostly an E until it's not. Here we go. Great backing track. I like playing over this one. I really like this. It's one of my favorites. I made this, but it's one of my favorites. Okay, here it comes. A minor. Mixed Lydian. Here I'll play mixed Lydian flat 6. And on we go. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. Now, that is what happens when occasionally you come across these chords that have extensions in them that maybe don't do so well with the typical scale choices. In that case, you must respect those changes. For example, were you to find yourself playing over a major 7 sus4, uncommon chord, but it does exist. Major 7 sus4. It's a major 7 chord like this. In this, let's say, for example, was the Thin Lizzy song, and this instead was this. What an unusual chord. In this instance, we would have to play Ionian because it's got a major 7 and a regular 4 and not a sharp 4. So we'd have to play that. Sometimes the extensions will be there and will dictate which scale you must play, but most commonly not. So here, once again, are the crib notes. If it's a 5 going to a 1, do what we did last week, right? Go watch that stream. It's available on YouTube. All about 5 to 1s. If it is a dominant 7 chord, not going to its 1 chord, then you can play mixed Lydian as a safe option, half whole diminished or Lydian dominant as less safe options. You can also play it as if it were a dominant blues. If it's a minor 7 chord, Dorian, unless you want to play a melodic minor, which is an interesting choice. We've got some questions about that. We'll get to that in a second. If it's a major 7 chord, just play Lydian. That's what's due when the chords don't fit. We are now going to take a few questions because we've got a bit of time. We haven't actually got any time, but I'll run maybe 5 minutes over because why not? Okay, cool. Here is a one from Mal Riley. Is the melodic minor the same as the harmonic minor? It is not. Harmonic minor is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, 7. Melodic minor is 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The difference is the 6. In a melodic minor, we have a raised 6. In a harmonic minor, you have a flat 6. But think about them like this. You know how Dorian and Aeolian are different to each other. Dorian has a raised 6, Aeolian has a flat 6. All of the other notes are the same. If you take an Aeolian scale and you sharpen the 7, Aeolian sharp 7, you can think about it as, that is harmonic minor. If you take a Dorian scale and you sharpen the 7, you get melodic minor. So melodic minor is to Dorian as harmonic minor is to Aeolian. Those are the differences. But it's a good question. It's a good question. And we can completely ignore this whole business of ascending and descending forms. That's a canard. We don't need to worry about that. Here's a great question from Justin Ray that definitely begs answering, which is how much time do or should you spend on legacy repertoire? This depends on a few things. If you are learning a new style, you should absolutely spend a good amount of time on legacy repertoire. Say, for example, you were delving into the world of jazz. The best thing you can do is transcribe and learn notable solos and play standards. That's the way to do it. If you're doing blues, learn some classic blues solos, learn some classic blues licks. Beyond that, it depends on how much you want to play classic repertoire. Because if what you want is to be able to play loads of cool songs, then you should absolutely spend time on that. And having a vocabulary is very important. But if you're actually just trying to skill up your guitar playing, you're trying to improve your guitar playing stats, so to speak, You might need less time on classic repertoire and more time on technique, theory, and fretboard visualization. But vocabulary should always be part of your practice. It may, however, be that your vocabulary practice is actually just developing your own vocabulary, which is something that probably I do more of. I don't spend a great deal of time myself on legacy repertoire because truthfully it's not really something that interests me. I like listening to classic repertoire. I don't have a huge desire to learn to play that much of it unless I'm going to play it live, because that for me is when songs get played. However, the value of it is super important. Another example of this, however, is if you're teaching. Because if you're teaching via the medium of songs is a great way to keep your students engaged. So if you're teaching, you should know songs. You should learn songs, you should know songs, you should spend time practicing them because it becomes of huge value to you. Folks, we've run out of time, but we're not finished with this whole business of chord changes. We will continue this next week, but we're going to continue it with a very specific set of chord changes that are really, really important. We're not going to tell you what they are. I'm not going to spoiler it for you, but we're continuing that next week. That is going to be the end of our chord changes set of streams, but they will remain on YouTube for at least some period of time. So if you haven't done so already, hit subscribe on whatever channel you happen to be watching on, whether it's Lick Library or Guitar Interactive Magazine. If you're not subscribed to the other channel, either Lick Library or Guitar Interactive, go to that channel and hit subscribe too. It's a really great way to help us get this out to as many guitar players and to show you support for what we're doing. You can also consider sharing this with your guitar playing friends. If you've got some use out of it, hopefully they will too. I'm going to play out on the Joe Bow backing track because it's a lot of fun. You know what? No, I've played this loads. I'm going to go back to the Lydian backing track, the Joe Satriani style backing track that we played over, that I wanted to call Lydian Alopecia Dream, because how else do you say it's legally distinct from Flying in a Blue Dream? Anyway, that's what I wanted to call it. You could have called it all sorts of things. The Silver Surfer Lydian Voyage, who knows, loads of things. It's a Joe Satriani style backing track. So for that, we're going to throw on, we had a lovely compliment about a lovely sing and lead tone from Response Audio. Thanks, man, I appreciate it. It's a fun tone. It's a Victory Super Sheriff with a Celestion Lynchback IR. The Lynchback is a very underrated speaker. I wish I owned a physical Lynchback, but I've got the IR, that'll have to do. With a Victory Super Sheriff, which is pretty cool. Folks, I'm going to bid you adieu. We'll see you next week for the last in this long series. Anyway, see you guys next week.